Today on the MotoMan podcast, we sit down with Mike Roberts, the head of automotive at one of the most important companies in the AI world, Qualcomm. This is like the emperor of all of the chips in cars. We talk about AI and how it factors into the future of cars.
There, in my opinion, is no more exciting place to be than in the automotive market right now because of all the inflections that are happening.
We then moved on to how AI is shaping future advanced driver assistance systems, otherwise known as ADAS.
The safety metrics on ADAS are going to be way above what human error is. It has to be.
And I look to Mike to give us insight as to what we do with the biggest byproduct that will come out of all these future cars. I always often refer to what you do as the plumbing for AI, because you are the chip. And it presents an opportunity for you to collect a hell of a lot of data.
Yes.
What happens with that data? So there is a big, I think, misnomer in the car world that AI is only autonomous driving. Is that true or is that not true?
Well, ADAS, I think of it as the superset of AI, for sure. Computer vision and the modeling that's happening. If you can solve ADAS, it's going to be one of the hardest human problems we've ever solved. However, the cockpit is going to see massive changes from AI, especially as we move into agentic AI. I actually think the cockpit is going to be the place where we see it most. We think of it maybe on a mobile device, maybe in a PC, other consumer electronic devices. Agentic, it sounds like a big word. It just means agent. It's a fancy way to say agent. So if I have an agent in the car with me, what are things that I would love to have done for me? Okay, then you start getting into things it can do for you throughout different apps. So when we talk about agentic AI, think of it as an interface in between you and all these disparate apps that we use. Mobile phone is probably the best example of you have a tiles of 15 different apps on your home screen. Okay, I go in and out, in and out, in and out. What if there was an agent that just did that for you and there was an SDK that essentially got into all those apps for you? So as an example, hey car, you're going to be able to pick your own name. I'm coming home from work. I need to pick up my daughter at soccer practice. We don't have any dinner ready for us. What do you suggest? Okay, well, the car then is able to say through the navigation system, guess what? You're 20 minutes from your daughter. I know that you like this type of food and I have your credit card on file. So would you like me to order food that you can then pick up? So pick up your daughter and then I'll drive you over to whatever restaurant or whatever pickup place you want. You guys can pick up dinner and then you'll head home. These are common use cases that I think everyone can relate to.
Okay, so let's step back a little bit because you are Qualcomm. When I think of Qualcomm, I think of chips for mobile devices.
Yeah.
And really only recently, as the desktop and laptop business has changed, you've gotten into that business. But I don't really think of a chip company
Yes.
alone doing AI.
Yes.
So explain to me where you started and how you got here.
How that evolution happened. So this is an interesting year for us. We are here for 40 years now. We started in 1985 as a communications company, quality communications. This is what Qualcomm means. And that's how we started in the car, was really started.
Didn't it start as an offshoot of University of San Diego or something like that?
Yes. Professor Erwin Jacob, was a professor at ECSD, started this company as a way to see if we could commercialize CDMA, which is a type of digital technology.
Oh, you're going back into my background. I was working with Qualcomm before you were at Qualcomm. That was your Motorola days.
That was my Motorola days. That's right. So the idea way back then was you get busy signals, all the analog calls you wouldn't be able to get through, which I know for people today is incomprehensible. But
call an airline, that happened.
That's true. That is true. But back then the pitch was you can get 6 times more users on a cell site than you can on an analog device. So his job was to commercialize it, which we did. So that kind of kicked off the whole company. And GM was one of the first customers we worked with for the OnStar system. So if you go back in the early 2000s,
That is the ATX.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes on that one.
Yeah. That was, I got into it. Car recognized you got into an accident, or you got in an accident, you need an emergency, and there was a cellular modem in your car that you could then dial out. So our origin of the company, and actually in automotive, is in the communication space. So what happens? Well, the car and the phone actually parallel each other a little bit. So what happens in the phone? Well, all of a sudden, I'm not just calling. You get very rudimentary mobile browsers. You start getting more processing power. We had our first gigahertz processor in a phone. The App Store comes alive, smartphones, we all know the rest of the story. So the connectivity is critical, but then computing becomes as much important part of that. Actually, not just any computing, high performance computing at very low power, because we're running on a battery. Okay, can we apply that to a car? Of course we can. And so that's exactly what we did. We started getting more into cockpits and infotainment.
What year is this that you're actually doing this?
I would say on the car side, you're probably looking at 10 plus years ago. I mean, so it didn't trail too much from the mobile side. Now, a lot of stuff had to come along the way with that. To your point, you're a chip company. Yeah, we're a chip company, but everything that runs on silicon. So you have to work with this massive ecosystem that is around you. The great news today is a lot of that ecosystem that's on mobile is now carried over into the vehicle. So we're able to do that. We've worked with the Googles. We've worked with all the software that you're used to on the mobile device that many people want to use on their car. So we're able to bring that and offer that whole ecosystem over to our partners.
So 10, 12 years ago, around that time, that's when you started to see these systems in cars get a bit more fancy, like famously the Cadillac Q system. In theory, was amazing. Where it did all these things. It had the icons like a phone. You could run your finger on the screen to get the volume up. But God help you using it because the processor was too slow.
Right.
What was the learning you guys took from that?
Well, I think some of it is user interface matters, which we are, I would say, a little bit abstracted from. However, at the end of the day, when you talk about latency, it's slow. I can't run numerous things at once. I'm using a radio and the maps, and all of a sudden the map isn't refreshing. That all comes down to the processor that you're using. So us being able to do all these tasks well at the same time, it's all a carryover from how we did for mobile. So to us, it was extremely applicable because the use cases weren't radically different.
So were you taking the learning and adding more speed while dissipating heat from mobile devices and applying it to cars?
That's correct. And then you also have the other effect of safety is first in automotive, right? So everything has to be built with a safety mindset. So we also were taking our learnings from there and then building auto grade chipsets for the auto market. That's what you have to do, right? The temperature ranges, all the other things that you have to do, all the ASIL compliance that you have to have around it. So it was taking our core knowledge of connectivity and computing from the R&D organization and then applying it to automotive.
So you're the business guy, but did you ever have because you work with a number of Asian manufacturers, you work with Mercedes, General Motors, a bunch of them. Did an OEM ever come to you and say, Mike, I love you, but this chipset is taking up too much space. I need that real estate back. Or were they more generous in giving you space to make this work?
Every customer interaction is a bit bespoke, where every customer is in their journey.
So you're saying you make custom suits now?
That's right. I wish you could say one size fits all for every automaker. It's just not the case. You have to work with where they are in their design cycle, the experiences that they want to drive. And then we work backwards from them of how do we enable that together.
You guys very successfully have become a chip company.
Yes.
One of the big ones out there. We talked about it earlier, how your CEO, 5 years ago, made a hell of a bet, basically bought up all the remnant fab space and have turned you into a very strong competitor against, say, like the NVIDIAs of the world. But now you're in the car world trying to basically be the plumbing of AI or autonomous driving, as you and I are talking about. What do you want to be when you grow up? What does it look like down the road?
There, in my opinion, is no more exciting place to be than in the automotive market right now. because of all the inflections that are happening. Obviously, you have the powertrain that's changing, right? Or at least a dual powertrain option now with EVs and ICE. By the way, an EV brings on an entirely new aspect of what is an EV? It's just a big battery. Power matters. Whereas you probably aren't as sensitive on a miles per gallon basis for a car. But if you say, hey, I dropped my mileage from this car could do 250 miles to 230 miles on a charge, it makes a difference. So our core competency of high performance, low power matters a lot. And these systems are running pervasively in the back. So to us, as you move forward, now you're also getting to a space where each of the areas of the car were developed in isolation, whether that's the cluster in front of the steering wheel, whether that's the radio in the, or the maps. And all of a sudden, things are starting to be centralized. So that's what we kind of call central compute. And then that leads into the software-defined vehicle. So as you start bringing more of this into a centralized place, now you're able to start delivering an experience to consumers that is more uniform throughout the whole vehicle, right? From the audio to the video to AI as well. So as we look forward, some of those use cases really start coming into fruition. As you, ADAS, we think, is such a critical piece, not only from a safety perspective. And by the way, the safety metrics on ADAS are going to be way above what human error is. It has to be. All of a sudden, you have an accident on ADAS. Well, there's accidents that happen every day for humans that we don't talk about, but ADAS, it makes the news.
Right? That brings up an interesting point. Like, you guys always often refer to what you do as like the plumbing for AI, because you are the chip. And it presents an opportunity for you to collect a hell of a lot of data.
Yes.
What happens with that data? Is that something that you guys keep and turn into a product, or are you using it in a different way? Or is it something like we talked about Marcus, who runs product at Mercedes? Does he keep it, or do you guys share it? How does that work?
Most OEMs want the data from their consumers. I should say all OEMs want data from their consumers. I would too if I worked at an OEM, and it is theirs, and it is their consumer. There are instances, and we've been open about this, that we're working with BMW on their ADAS solution. We'll be able to talk more about that later in the year. But that data we work together on, right? And that's cool.
So now we're moving from the plumbing, the hardware, where you're actually moving up into the software portion of it.
Yeah. But there, on the consumer data, we never say we are the only owner of that. No OEM would go for it anyways. But frankly, from our side, our job is to say, okay, OEM, what do you want to do with that data? Let us help you with that, right? From that could be our connected services portfolio, which we call car to cloud, right? In terms of how do we take that data for the user and then have it benefit them? With agentic AI, you're going to be able to know that person a little bit. Of course, they have to give you permission to do that, but it's like, I know the food you like. I know the routes you take every day. I know that you pick up your kid or when you leave the house every day. And they're able to customize things around that, or offer services to them. Like I mentioned, being able to order things through your car.
So let's clarify here. So your business, you're very much planning on staying in the hardware business, but helping with the software, but not necessarily competing in the software world.
Our job isn't to compete with our OEMs. Our job is to help our OEMs get to where they want to go. Take as much or as little as you want. Nothing is a black box that we say, take it all or nothing. So we try and be customizable.
And does that filter down into the actual hardware where you change the hardware per OEM?
So that's a great question. And it leads into something that we call Snapdragon Flex. Snapdragon Flex is the ability to do both cockpit and ADAS on the same piece of silicon. In some cases, if you have, let's just say, a level 1 system or a level 2 system of ADAS, and you have, let's just say, a mid-tier cockpit solution. So say a mid-tier car, right? Economy to mid-tier car. I can run all that on one piece of silicon. Okay, that's great. Now I have a higher tier car. Okay, I have now an L2 plus or even above type solution that I want to put on that. So actually that piece of silicon is all going to be running ADAS. Or the cockpit is a more advanced cockpit. I just want one piece of silicon to run all that cockpit. So I might need 2 chipsets.
So translated, you could have more functionality on a lower priced vehicle.
Yeah.
Would you still retain some of the processing power we're talking about? Like, remember we went back to the Cadillac example.
Yeah.
The Cadillac Q didn't work because there wasn't enough processing power. If you try to put all of this on one chip, would that essentially stifle the performance of some of these systems are trying to build on?
So that's where the guidance we give OEMs, depending on the experience that they want.
Yeah.
If it is a more, let's just say, economy car or a mid-tier cockpit solution, you might be able to run it all on one chip. Right, along with a level 1 or level 2 ADAS solution, maybe all on one, which is very economical for them to do that.
So let me pivot on you a little bit. Some manufacturers like General Motors, you guys power the Super Cruise, correct? Mm-hmm. So they've done something interesting where they've segmented their cars out, kind of like you're explaining here, where if you buy a Corvette, I have Apple CarPlay or I have Android Auto. Yeah. But if you buy a Blazer EV, you don't get those things.
That's correct.
They want their own operating system there. How many OEMs are coming to you now saying the same thing? You don't have to name them.
Yeah.
But is it only GM doing this, or have others said, you know what, we want to own this whole experience?
I think so. Let's take a look at China, which I don't know if many of the users out there are familiar with what's going on in China, but that is one wholly owned by the OEM. And one of the OEMs over there said, our litmus test is actually, if I need my phone to do it, our user interface has failed. So they want to completely, that is the litmus test inside the company.
So even though you're replicating it on the screen, if it has to use the phone,
it's a fail. We failed as a company.
Wow, it's brutal.
Right? But it's a hard litmus test of going, can I deliver the user experience independent of the phone? So I think, in fact, there's some companies in China that have phones and cars, right? And so the integration of those as well, I'll use Xiaomi as an example. I don't know if your viewers are familiar with Xiaomi.
50% of the viewers are international.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So you look at what the Xiaomi device has, and then you look at the SU7, and when those two pair together, it is a seamless experience.
So let's switch gears into either Western Europe or North America. Have any other, besides General Motors, again, you don't have to name them, have they come to you saying the same thing? You built this chip.
Yep.
You got all these versions where I can have one processor, I can have 3 processors. We want to build our own thing. Or is anybody else trying to do the same?
Definitely interest from people saying, I want to own the consumer experience end to end.
Wow. And do you push them one way or the other to say, maybe in this market it won't work, or we've got this demonstrated experience in China and here's how it is, and do whatever you want?
We see ourselves as a trusted advisor to the OEMs.
So you're like the consigliere.
Yes.
You're Robert Duvall. You kind of look like Robert Duvall.
I mean, it's one of those things where we don't have a stake in the game either way. So we're actually trusted in that way of, of course, we're a silicon provider and we can help you with the whole stack up and down. But our honest to goodness motivation is to do what's right for you, or you're the OEM in that tier of car at this point in time of where you are, because everything's a roadmap. Everything is, nothing is a point in time, as we know. So where you are today may be different than where you want to get to in 5 years. So we might give you different suggestions depending on that.
All of us here at MotoMan are super excited to not only have the podcast back, but for it to be its own show. And there we look to you for a little assistance. Can you help us grow the show? 2 really easy ways to do that. First and foremost, if you're reaching out via YouTube or other streaming platforms, you click on subscribe, notifications, or more importantly, share these episodes with your friends, especially on Reddit. Now, if you're downloading these episodes, listening via podcast platforms, we'd ask you to rate us. The good stars are wonderful, but leaving a written review would be even better, especially sharing who was your favorite guest. So with that, I am incredibly grateful for your assistance in help growing this. And now, back to the episode. Perfect segue. Before you and I wrap for the day, let's future.
Yes.
Paint me a picture. Let's dream together. Give me like 3 examples of what could be done in the future, and not like, hey, I can buy my kid a pizza or the car is going to drive itself. 3 cases where 3 to 5 years down the road, or maybe 5 to 10 years down the road, where do we see this going?
Well, I'm not going to go down the robo-taxi lane because enough people.
Everyone knows that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's 25 years down the road.
Right. I think when you look at a vehicle today and you're driving it, there's actually fairly basic things that will delight the customer in a few years. I think one, and this doesn't sound like a massive mind-boggling thing, just mirror the experience I have in a smartphone. Just give me the same experience that I have there, because even cars today,
I mean, like dating apps?
sometimes you could do that. I mean, if you wanted to.
Mike the matchmaker.
The swipe left and the swipe right,
Yeah.
On that. But I think that's kind of what a lot of people want. So I think the bar, as I said from one of the Chinese OEMs, was I don't need my phone, right? I don't need to pick up my phone in the car. I don't need to how many people are texting in the car? It's really scary, the amount of distracted driving versus way beyond drunk driving, right? So I think that would be very delightful for all consumers of going, I can actually put this in my glove box and I don't need to use it for the car ride. Then you go to the next level and go, okay, how do things start interacting each other? Instead of saying, I'm just doing streaming radio or I'm just looking at navigation. How do things start intertwining together? One of the things I've noticed with any type of assisted driving is that you can get pretty comfortable with it, almost to a fault, because it is getting fairly good. But how can I start talking to the car to do things that I want it to do? I know you said don't use the example of picking up my kid or something like that, but there's other things of just, okay, my latest favorite podcast has all of a sudden come into the car. And now it says, hey, do you want to, it knows that preference because I've picked it as I like this podcast. Hey, I know you like this kind of music. At the end of a stressful day, what kind of music do you want to listen to? Do you want to calming music, or are you pissed off and want to listen to something heavier, right? Whatever it is, the car starts forming around you of what you need at that moment.
Could the car sense the changes in you automatically? I know there's already some Genesis have biometric reading type things. Could it say, hey, Mike, it looks like you've had a really bad day. Here's B-52s or whatever you're into.
Because the ADAS systems today can already tell, you know what, you look tired. You should pull over and get a cup of coffee. They can see it in your face. So now it's just taking that sensor input that it has and now feeding it into...
It's very heavy-handed, though. I just drove a Toyota Prius Prime up to Tahoe and back. And I put it in the level 2.5 mode. And I'm trying to let it drive, and it kept on saying, you're distracted. You're distracted. Is there something in the roadmap to make it more, less errors?
Yeah.
Is that something that's fixed at the hardware level, or are you guys doing anything to fix that?
I think that comes down to a lot of the regulatory bodies, right? So it's going to be different where you are in the world, but also showcasing that I don't need an intervention every 3 seconds if my eyes drift off or if my hands aren't on the wheel. We need to build confidence in the systems as you start moving up to level 3, maybe ultimately up to level 4, and then obviously level 5. But delivering that confidence over millions and millions and millions of miles of saying, it's okay if the person is taking their eyes off for 5 seconds or 10 seconds. The ironic thing about a lot of things today, to your point, is they keep nagging you. So what do people do? They go off the ADAS system and then I'm going to text because it knows
the most annoying thing in the world. Yeah.
Right. So you have to build confidence that the system has you for that sense.
That brings up a good point. I don't know how the viewers know this, but OEMs, they lobby governments around the world to say, hey, this is the problem we can't fix right now, or how about we focus on this? Are you doing that? Are you actually lobbying either on behalf of yourself as Snapdragon for cars, or are you working with the General Motors of the world and going to them, hey guys, we need some time to work on level 3?
Yeah.
Is that part of your remit, or you don't do that?
I think as we get into more of the stack business, right? When you just develop the SoC, of course, we're working with the OEM on that. But GM is taking definitely for the Cruise example, right? They're taking a lead role. As we look at the BMW partnership we have, we're in this kind of jointly. So yes, we're going together because we're both building the stack together. And then as we take that stack and now bring it to other OEMs, yes, we're going to have to start taking a more proactive role in doing that.
And I didn't ask before, why would BMW come to you and ask to help with the software business side of it?
Yeah.
Why would they do that where General Motors say they wouldn't?
So if you remember a few years ago, we accompanied a company called Arriver, who was based in Munich, ironically, who we were working together with BMW. So as we developed that relationship, we then acquired Arriver, and then that partnership just kept evolving. So it was already kind of a previous relationship that they had established with Arriver and our partnership together. And then Arriver became part of Qualcomm, and the relationship just continued. So now as we take that stack and commercialize it with BMW, then we look at that and go, okay, here's another asset that we can provide. Mm-hmm. And to the point I made earlier, you want to take our SoC? Great. You want to take full stack? Great. You just want to take driving policy or our perception stack or whatever it may be? Fine. We're willing to work with you because each OEM has their own solution, right? Each OEM might have parallel paths going of, hey, we might use Qualcomm, but we're going to develop our own, see how that goes. Or not everyone's betting on one horse.
Does that mean like what the learning you take from BMW, you guys can turn that around as your own like Qualcomm product and put it in other cars? Or does the learning just stay within the BMW confines?
So we're able to take that and bring it to other OEMs that we're going to be announcing soon. So
okay.
For that.
That's quite a cliffhanger. So you've never been on the show before.
Yes.
And the way that I like to end these episodes is I like to turn this around to the audience and basically have them ask a question of you.
Yes.
So what do you want in terms of feedback from the audience? And I'm going to give you a provision. They are very honest. They are very forward. So be careful what you wish for because you will get it.
Yes. So here's the question I'd have for you. And I'm going to mimic a little bit what was asked of me. What is the number one thing you want in your car in 3 to 5 years? So you have your current car today. Average ownership is, 8 to 10 years, 7 years. In your next car, what is the expectation that you have of, I expect this car to be able to do this, and that's my number one thing. I will not buy the car if it doesn't do this.
That's quite a loaded question. But no, this is like the emperor of all of like the chips in cars. Like I'd say you guys do more than half the chips in cars at this point.
We do a lot.
You do a lot.
We work with every OEM.
You gave me a number. They were doing, he did a whole slide. It was like 141 cars you're in.
That's right.
Since 2000, models since 2023. Yeah. So that makes him the emperor of the chips. So if you want some crazy like application, Mike is the one that can make it happen.
We want to know.
Yes.
Because you just can't make a chip in a year. We have to project out. We have to have crystal balls and say 3 to 4 years. This is what
Actually, you should probably revise your question because you can't do, and this doesn't come to market in 3 to 4 years. It comes to market, frankly, in 5 to 7.
That's right.
So that's really what we should ask for, 5 to 7 years.
If you can think out that far.
That's why this guy gets paid the big buck. Right. He thinks I'd even be on that. Mike, thank you for having me down here. Really appreciate this.
George, wonderful to meet you.
And I look forward to seeing some of these comments back. And I'm going to come back to you. And I think I should read the comment for you and then give you like a timeline. We'll come up with like a project management list, and then we'll put them in a car.
We also put chili peppers next thing. How spicy is it? So one chili pepper is not super spicy, but maybe some of these ideas like, boy, that's like a 4 spice answer right there.
Is that like a UCSD thing?
Something we made up.
Yeah.
So the spicier, the better.
Okay. It's up to you guys. Until we see you in the next episode, bis später.
Thank you.